Well, let me introduce you properly. You probably know him from all of his NFL draft coverage. He puts out, I think, the most comprehensive, the most impressive draft guide called The Beast every year. And as someone who has a really hard time getting into the draft, is like it's my bibliography essentially here. Something that I always have to reference because it's such impressive. He just put out his first mock draft of the year from The Athletic. Dane Brugler is with us. Dane, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Jeremy?
I'm so good, and I really appreciate you making some time to talk to us. I want to jump right into your mock draft here, and let's start right there at the top because it's really been the conversation of the past 4 days since that Michigan Ohio State game. Hutchinson or Thibodeau? You had the Lions taking Hutchinson first overall. Tell me about that decision that you weighed on both sides and what you like about both players.
Well, I think first off, it's important to set the stage for what this draft is. It's not a normal draft when you have these quarterbacks at the top or these necessarily elite level prospects. I referenced in the mock draft that we don't usually have 10 no-brainer top 10 picks every year. But this year we only have one, maybe two, and we just don't have the elite level talent at the top. Now we have really good talent,
Right.
but it's just a little different than most years. And so in a year like this, where you look at the Lions, say they end up with the number one overall pick, we know they need a long-term answer at quarterback. But which quarterback you take in there? We know, there's some really good offensive tackles in this class, but we don't think they're going to address offensive tackle at number one. So if they stay put at number one, it really looks like it could be Thibodeau or Hutchinson. And when you boil it down to those two options, Hutchinson has to look awfully appealing to this organization. The fact that he grew up outside of Detroit, in state, that kind of thing, is a nice story. But you're not drafting a player based on geography.
Right.
You're drafting him because he is a game wrecker, and he is number two in the nation in pressure. His ability to win with quickness, with power, skilled handwork. And I think what's really going to separate him throughout the process with coaches is this guy it was put to me like this by a scout. He's the long lost Watt brother when you talk about his mentality, his competitiveness. He had a quote, I think it was during the summer media days, that he's ready to die for this. And you know what? I kind of believe him. Like that's just kind of his mentality of how he attacks the game. One of the reasons he came back to Ann Arbor was to play Ohio State. And he played on Saturday like a guy that literally looked at the calendar every single morning and said, okay, what am I going to do today to be better so I can, go out there and play the game of my life against the Buckeyes? And that's exactly what he did. So, is he your traditional number one overall pick? Not necessarily. But, it's kind of like, Chris Long with number two overall to the Falcons way back when. He's not quite on the Bosa level, but there are some parallels there that can get you excited. And it's not like Thibodeau's a bad option here. But I do think that Thibodeau's been kind of propped up as this, Myles Garrett, Chase Young type of prospect. And he's not on that level. The size isn't there. There's some things missing that would put him on that elite level. Now, don't get me wrong. Thibodeau in this class is absolutely worthy of that number one overall pick. I think, the Lions, if they go that direction, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think he's a very good player. Might be the best player in this draft, but he is not on the Bosa level, the Myles Garrett, the Chase Young. He's just not that type of prospect.
What have you heard about Thibodeau in terms of that mentality? Because I think you're right. Like I think one of the things that will definitely appeal to Lions is Hutchinson's attitude. We saw Harbaugh talk the other day, just like this is a guy who never takes a play off, never takes a snap off in practice, and that's exactly the kind of guy that Dan Campbell's looking for. Does Thibodeau kind of have that same fire that you've heard or seen?
I think there's some questions about that, and the interview process is going to be big. But I was watching the Oregon State tape from this past Saturday, Oregon State, and Thibodeau had a late hit penalty because he literally took the running back, picked him up, and threw him on the ground. This is an intense player, right. So you don't see a lot of plays where he's taken off. Now, what's going on between games? In the middle of the week during practice, is he doing everything that he can do to get better? Is he a guy that lives in the film room? And these are the type of questions that scouts are talking to the coaching about. They're trying to get to the bottom of just how much does he love football, because he's known as a guy that has a lot of interest, whether it be with cryptocurrency, and whether it be he just has a lot of different interests, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Von Miller loved farming. That's what he majored in at A&M. And so I think he's been a pretty disruptive NFL player. So not in any way saying that outside interest should influence whether Thibodeau's all football all the time. But I do think it's something that scouts are they're investigating, doing their due diligence to find out exactly where does his passion lie, where is football on the priority list.
Go ahead, Mike.
Well, you mentioned that Thibodeau doesn't have that Myles Garrett type ceiling. What would you say Thibodeau's ceiling is at this point?
I maybe Jadeveon Clowney. I see a lot of Harold Landry, except I think he's stronger and longer. I mean, Harold Landry was not a great run player in college. Thibodeau is a very good run player, not just a one-trick pony, not just a speed rusher, but he does use bend really well. His jab step really sets up his ability to swipe, to swat, to do these different things, to get around the corner. And so he's a guy that I think has a lot of tools. He's just figuring out how to use all those tools in unison to be a more efficient pass rusher. So I say Harold Landry, and some people might kind of roll their eyes at that. Harold Landry is one of like a handful of players this year that already has double-digit sacks. So, I mean, he's a really good player. And Thibodeau, I think, is a better version of that because he's better versus the run. He's a longer player. And I think he just has a little more upside.
A lot of people who have taken kind of Thibodeau's side on this debate, a lot of them will point to the fact that Hutchinson's got a pretty darn good player playing on the opposite end of him. And maybe that's kind of opening up opportunities for him. Is that something that you see, and maybe something that the reason why Thibodeau's numbers aren't at Aiden Hutchinson's stats so far?
Not necessarily, because they're not David Ojabo, the defensive end opposite Hutchinson's awesome, but they're not doubling Ojabo. They're doubling Hutchinson. Hutchinson's the focus of the offense. When you see a running back to that side to chip, or the tight end on that side, Ojabo. I think if anything, Ojabo is really benefited from Hutchinson on the other side. Ojabo's got almost double-digit sacks himself. I think he's at 9 right now, and I think that's Ojabo's a really good player, but he's still figuring things out. I mean, he's a football novice at this point, but still a freaky talent. He was number 15 overall in this mock draft. So I think it's a valid thing to bring up, but it's not something that I think should influence the player that you draft.
I want to move. Go ahead. One more. Take one. No.
I just wanted to, are either one of these guys, because the Detroit Lions, they have a not a very good pass rush at this point, and they're lacking a lot of talent. Are either one of these guys going to be the guys that can come in and immediately change that? Or are they going to be the guys that are not necessarily going to have to rely on having talent there with them to help them get to the quarterback, or are these guys, ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, they're, like I said, I don't think that you should expect a Chase Young like impact to it. He from day one, it was obvious. I think it's season opener last year. He had a forced fumble and a sack, and I mean, it was you could tell from the start this guy was just a difference maker. These two guys are really good players, but I do think that they're going to be rookies in the NFL going up against some really good offensive tackles. You look at Kayvon Thibodeau, for example. Who's the best offensive tackle he's faced this year? He didn't play in the Ohio State game, so unfortunately we don't have that apples to apples comparison. Thibodeau against Petit Frere at left tackle, just like Hutchinson against left tackle. So we don't have that. Pac-12 is not a strong group of offensive tackles, and so I don't know that we've necessarily seen Thibodeau go up against top-tier talent this year. So that's something that will be an adjustment because he'll be going up against left tackles that will understand what Thibodeau wants to do, and they'll have an answer for it. They'll be able to counter it. And so Thibodeau has to have his own group or his own mix of counters to counteract what the offensive tackle does. It's a game. It's a dance. And so it will take some time, I think, before they really establish themselves as guys that are top 15 pass rushers in the NFL. But they do have that ability that, at some point during their rookie contract, their first 3 years, they should be able to do that.
All right, I want to move to quarterbacks here because I feel like there's a lot of groupthink in draft talk, and you definitely kind of going against it in your latest mock because you don't have you basically have Matt Corral as the third quarterback off the board at 19. You have Kenny Pickett as the first one off the board at 10. Tell me of your kind of overall thoughts and maybe hierarchy of the quarterback class, and do you think one of them is possible for the Lions to pick there at 1?
I'd be very surprised, but you know what? If you fall in love with the guy, then
you do it.
Go for it. I mean, if you think there's a quarterback in this class who can lead you, that can help you win a division and lead you to the playoffs, that's all you can ask for. I mean, that's what you want. Now, I find it hard to believe they're going to see that guy here, but maybe they will. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and it's never more true than when it comes to quarterbacks. Yep. So looking at this quarterback class, Kenny Pickett, I have him coming off the board at 10 to the Panthers. And I had Sam Howell at 16 to the Steelers, and then Matt Corral soon after to Washington. When I do a mock draft, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, I go not based off of my own opinion. I go based off of what I hear. And, just talking to the feedback I get from NFL teams, a lot of guys are willing to bet on Kenny Pickett the most of this group just because they feel like they know what he is. Sam Howell, he's got some question marks. Matt Corral's, he's coming from a system where a lot of things are predetermined. He's a smaller guy. He's about 200 pounds. So there's a lot of things working against those players, but there's also things to be excited about with their arm talent and their accuracy, their athleticism. So, it's just a really, really unique quarterback class. And the Lions, especially when you consider they have the 23rd pick right now, they also have the 33rd pick. So, they could be, if they aren't sold on any of these quarterbacks at number 1, they want to hit the home run with the number 1 pick, whether it's Thibodeau or Hutchinson, they go that direction. But maybe they really like a Desmond Ridder or Malik Willis or one of these quarterbacks. They can play around with that pick 23, pick 33, with some other picks. And, maybe use pick 33 to move up into that late first round. You get your pass rusher at 1, your wide receiver at 23, and then, you draft your Desmond Ridder at pick 30, get that 5th-year option. I mean, so there's a lot of different ways they could play this if they really are dead set on getting a quarterback this year.
Can you talk a little more about Kenny Pickett? Just because I'm curious, you said you heard some things that the teams are willing to trust him more than anyone else in this class. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think that when you look at what translates to the next level, there's fewer questions. He comes from a pro-style offense. It's a lot of what we saw Joe Burrow doing at LSU, a lot of 5-man protections. As the quarterback, you have to be able to read the blitz, understand where pressure's coming from, while still keeping your eyes downfield, making your reads. And, Kenny Pickett's an older guy. He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie. But he's also, that experience is a big factor in why he's been so successful this year. There's a lot of things to like from Pickett's when you look at what he's done on the field this year. The hand size is going to be something that's going to be talked about. He wears gloves. He has around 8.5-inch hands. That's something might be an issue for a lot of teams, especially you look at a team like Detroit, who, they play in the NFC North, where you're going to Chicago, you're going to Green Bay. Obviously home games are indoors, but you still have to go on the road, and maybe that could matter in December. Now, I will say, watching Kenny Pickett as a thrower, you do not see the smaller hands show up. Now, ball security wise, the fumbles, you do see that sometimes, but as a thrower, as a passer, that is not something that has come up. So there's a lot to like about Kenny Pickett. It's not going to be hard for a team to talk themselves into him as maybe being their guy in this draft.
Is there any diamonds in the rough in terms of quarterbacks in this draft? I mean, could the Lions maybe load up on receiver, load up on some of the other things they need, and maybe in the later rounds go with somebody like Bo Nix and be okay, or is it that first round or bust?
Yeah, and it's just tough because you look at where most of the quarterbacks are coming from. It's the first round. I mean, there's a chance this could be the first year, or it's the second time in the last 20 years that we have more quarterbacks drafted on day 2 than day 1. It's rare that happens, but it's possible this year. Now, the quarterbacks that I didn't have going round 1, there's some day 2 options that could be interesting. I mentioned Malik Willis and Desmond Ridder. Both those guys have a lot of talent. there's some question marks there. Carson Strong from Nevada, there's a lot to like about him. Biggest worry with him might be the knee, just the medical evaluations. There's going to be some teams that are just out because of the knee. And so that is something to watch with Carson Strong, just the medical part of this. And then let's keep an eye on which other underclassmen declare. Phil Jerkovic at Boston College. What does he do? Does he come out? He'd go back to school. Tanner McKee at Stanford. There's a couple of these underclassmen that have a big decision to make. The other seniors, I like Bailey Zappi from Western Kentucky. There's things I like about him, but we're talking about a 4th, 5th round guy, someone that can come in and be your Taylor Heineke, be your that type of quarterback who can win you some football games, but do you really think he's going to lead you to a Super Bowl? So if I'm the Lions, I'm drafting a quarterback, somewhere in the top 50. Or I'm probably not doing so with the idea that they could possibly be the long-term answer.
One more question before we let you go. Sorry, Mike.
Okay.
I don't want to keep Dane too long. We got to get to your second pick for the Lions in your mock draft. Treylon Burks from Arkansas obviously filled a big need at wide receiver. Tell me what you like about his game.
Yeah, he's such a unique talent because he looks like a linebacker. Just when you watch him out there, he's 6'2", 225, 230 pounds. But he's going to run in the 4.5s. He's going to run in the low 4.5s. He's a really good athlete. They use him across the formation at Arkansas, slot, outside. They'll get him in motion. He's not one of these guys that's going to play tight end. He's a wide receiver, kind of in that AJ Brown type of mold as a pass catcher. You can just do so many different things with him. Very unique player. Needs to the details of the position are still. He's still learning and developing that part of it in terms of his routes, his stems, some of the timing, the pacing. But this is a guy that has all the talent, and for a team that is just really missing that playmaker at receiver, I don't think you can go wrong with a player like Treylon Burks. But they'll have options too. I think in this scenario, I think only Garrett Wilson was off the board when the Lions picked at 23. So if you want to go Chris Olave from Ohio State, who is more of that NFL ready guy, creates his own separation. He's already a professional when you talk about his routes, his ability at the catch point. He's not a big guy. He's not a yak threat. He's not going to make guys miss. He's not going to, broken tackles are not part of his game. That's why, we're talking about him as maybe a later first rounder, but I would not be surprised if they went that direction. This is a wide receiver class that, we're missing that top 10 pick, but there's some really quality options, guys that are really talented. Jamison Williams, so explosive. A guy like Jahan Dotson, Drake London from USC. So if the Lions really want to address wide receiver with that second first round pick, they will have options, different sizes, different types of wide receiver. So it would make sense if they go that direction.
All right. Dane, I appreciate your time. Obviously, check out all of Dane's stuff over at The Athletic. The Athletic does amazing things. Do they have any? I know they usually have some sort of amazing deal going on. Is there anything going on now that you know of?
Well, they just finished our Black Friday deal, so that went away. But I'm sure that this week that there'll be something else. So yeah, hopefully people check it out. And because I think draft season is the best time to have your Athletic subscription, if I do say so myself. But the draft guide will be coming in April, and there's no better resource for this draft class.
That's Dane Brugler. You can follow him at DP Brugler on Twitter. Dane, really, really appreciate your time and your insight for the NFL draft.
Hey, Mike, Jeremy, thanks guys.
No problem.
Thanks,
Thank you.